What's ripening YouTube? I'm out here with my good friend Joshua at Coppice Culture on Instagram, and we're here in LaBelle, Florida, and we're just wrapping up our latest agroforestry installation. Let's go check it out. All right, so a main element of the overall design for this project was these two ponds right here. Actually, you can see there's a little alligator, little guy right down there. This existing pond, like just this corner, was already existing, and what we decided to do was extend this pond significantly, and actually we even dug another one on the other side of the driveway to create more of a microclimate for the grove. So there's a little bit more buffering of temperature having this water body here, and we also used the material out of the pond to raise up the area where the grove is. So, you know, this site originally was prone to some flooding. The property on the other side of this windbreak, if you look out, it's probably hard to tell on the video, but the land over there is probably about a foot, maybe a foot and a half lower than it is where I'm standing on this side. So what we've done is just created a high area so it sheds the water off, and it gives our fruit trees a little bit better chance of establishing and having a better life, so they're not getting waterlogged all the time, especially the avocados. There's a few things in here that just don't put up with it. But that was a big design element, taking that pond material, building this up, creating a little bit of a buffer zone here. And the next phase of the project is actually the planting that goes around the pond. There's going to be a gazebo right here. That's where there's a little stub up for the irrigation. This pathway goes all the way around the back side of the pond for access. And as you can see here, we've got 2 wells that have been dug, and those are being used for irrigation, not only for this grove, but also for the windbreak, and then also for another main line that goes out to the pasture. As the property extends beyond the windbreaks that we created, it actually goes another 40 acres out. And so we have a water supply for that as well. All right, so this is actually phase 2 of this project. This was a project that I designed about 2 years ago, and we installed the windbreak all the way around the perimeter of this particular 5-acre parcel last year in July. So that windbreak is now about 1.5 years old. It's come in and established itself really well. Originally we were going to plant everything out last year, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we had to postpone. And I'm actually kind of glad we did, because in the time since we made this design, we've had the windbreak come up, and we've also developed a lot of our agroforestry systems a lot further along. So I think we're coming up with a better product. But if you look, these are actually all concentric rings or semicircles around a middle point. They're all parallel to each other, so there's a even spacing between the tree lines, which is 30 feet from center to center, all throughout the whole thing. So there's plenty of access for machinery to come through here. There's also plenty of opportunities to cover crop seed in over this grass and create our own fertility systems for the tree beds. Let's get a little bit closer and see what's in the system. So if you're curious how we ended up laying out this project, this is not the full design. This is just the irrigation plan, but it shows you right here. We created a center point that was going to be the middle of all these arches, and we put it in. Actually, right over there, there's a piece of metal conduit that we pounded into the ground, and we just came out here with a 300-foot tape and put one side on there, dragged it out, and then we just walked all the way around and used spray paint to mark a dotted line, and that was our guideline. We did each line like that with using these dimensions. There's 50 foot, 80 foot, 110 foot, 80 foot, 110, 140, 170, 200, and we created all these arches out in the field with spray paint, and that's how we did it. It's pretty simple. It's pretty easy to make a circle. If this had been a really kind of crazy design, it would have been much more difficult to make it look exactly like what I drew on the picture, but because we went with concentric rings, it wasn't too bad, and I think the product came out really nice. So before we talk about the plants that are in the system, let's talk about how we set this up. When we came in and laid this project out, we came in and marked out where these tree lines were going to go, and we actually came and tilled just the pathways, or just the tree lines, I mean, and we let them sit, and then we came back and did it again about a week or two later. What we're trying to do is eliminate this grass. You can see they've got a pretty resilient rhizomial kind of grass that kind of runs and kind of crawls through wherever it wants to be. The idea is that we're trying to knock that down, and then right before we did our actual planting, we came and tilled one more time. We came through with a subsoiler right down the midline, which is what this line is here. A subsoiler dug about 18 inches down and broke up any compacted layer that was under the surface. And then we used our bedder to just bunch up a little bit of dirt down these lines. The reason why you're seeing this part here is because the bed, we actually ran further than we needed to on purpose so that we could truncate these beds wherever we wanted to. This is going to get all back dragged and flattened out now that it's over with, but it helps me to illustrate what we did because you can't see it anymore. We've already hidden all the work. All right, so the main pattern for this agroforestry system is to have a main fruit tree every 20 feet, as you can see here, and then have a banana in between. So every 10 feet is either a banana or fruit tree. And then there's a whole litany of other things that go in as subspecies. But what we did to keep this organized is each tree line is a specific variety of banana and a specific type of fruit tree. So the outer ring out there, those are all Annona species. The next two rows are mangoes. We've got a row of avocados, a row of guavas, a row of sapodillas, longans, coconuts, and like I said, each one of those rows has a different variety of banana, but they're consistent within the row. So the maintenance is a little bit more digestible in the long term. This particular row is the avocado row. And as you can see, we've got an avocado, we've got a banana, and an avocado. The way that we laid these out, in between, we've got our corymbia. This is eucalyptus or Corymbia terrelliana. We've put them in between each one, all the way through. That's going to be our emergent layer of the forest system. And then we've got pigeon pea in between the corymbia and the other main species. Pigeon pea, pigeon pea, pigeon pea, all the way through. And that's the main skeleton for all these lines. And then we did a secondary early crop. In this particular case, we've added in sugarcane. As you can see, this is a black sugarcane, a Thai black variety of sugarcane. We have another row in the very back that's got a different variety of sugarcane. And then a lot of these other rows have a couple different types of cassava that we put in here, or yucca. And you'll see, like right here, here's a cutting of yucca placed in here. We've also placed in some jack beans, some other types of beans and things that come up and kind of cover the space. Another thing we did on the other side, I'll show you in just a second, is the pineapples. Let's go check out the pineapple pathway. Here's what the irrigation system looks like. As you can see, we've got 3 zones, and they're all set up with valves that run up into this control box. This is a Hunter control box, and it's ready to be set up so that the water can be automated and the plants can get established as well as humanly possible. Now, because we have different types of fruit trees in each one of these rows, what we actually did in this particular zone was put a ball valve on each tree line, so that if there's a time of the year where, you know, a particular type of tree needs to have more or less water, we can modify that or regulate that to some extent. You know, some of these trees actually do benefit from a drought stress or from something like that, and some of them just need to be trickled on all the time. But the main thing too is that, you know, this irrigation probably won't be completely necessary in the long term, but one of the big advantages is this is going to give us some cold protection in the wintertime. We can run this, if we know it's going to be a cold night, we can run this whole zone, this entire planting can be run all at the same time for as long as we want. We can kind of humidify the area, dampen everything, put some ground temperature water on these plants on a cold night and keep them from actually freezing and dying. So that's part of the plan here, is just to have that frost protection as well, or the cold damage protection. So the irrigation system, the way we set it up, there are main lines that feed to all of these tree lines, and then they come up out of the ground, and then you have this polyline tubing, and we just have these little microjet emitters. They're placed on the bananas and on the main fruit trees. In that case over there, it's a mango tree. These have a 360 spray pattern, and so they actually do water a pretty wide area. And once this mulch gets wet, which it already kind of is, it's already kind of damp. If you reach down in there, it's pretty wet. It's a pretty stable, humid forest floor type environment that should develop really nicely. This is one of the main advantages this site has over mine, is that it has an irrigation system from the beginning with timers, and I wish I had had that when I started mine. So another thing about this particular project is that we did leave wider pathways than we normally would on a grove like this. Partially just as the preference of the owner, they wanted a little bit more wide open space. But one of the things that allows for is more area in the middle that we can experiment with. And what we've been talking about with this particular client is trialing different fodder crops and ground covers and grasses and things like that. Partially because we want a fertility system for this particular area, but also because he's going to be developing a rotational grazing system. That's the rest of this 40-acre property here. It's going to be rotational grazing. This gives us some small areas that we can disc, put a seed out and see how it runs, and we can compare them in a similar situation. And then we'll have them to cut and use here, but it will also inform how to develop their rotational grazing system over there. If they want to end up doing an agroforestry style, maybe wider space tree lines, or a different, seeded out or plugged in cover crops or fertility systems. This is going to give us an example or an area that we can kind of play with and see how it goes. In this particular context, they were not interested in putting in really, really large vegetable beds or anything like that. So in our context here, we're looking at grass systems or something similar. And I think it could be a really interesting next phase of the project. And hopefully we'll get into that in the near future. All right, so we're just wrapping it up. If you look way down there, you can see Josh putting in the last bit of seeds, putting in some bush beans and some azomite around the bananas, and we're putting in some papaya seeds just to see if we can get some to pop up here. If this is something that interests you, comment down below. If you have any questions, make sure you like the video. If you want to get in touch with us and do a consultation on your own project, or if you'd like to have something like this done for yourself, you can reach us through my email or my website, peaceriverorganics.com. Email is pro@peaceriverorganics.com. Hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.